So something I've really enjoyed about this weekend is the fact that we have been, at least with the work that I've been doing with the band The Many from Chicago, which is Darren Calhoun's band and Leslie Michelle's band, as we have talked extensively about, if you were at the opening litany, we talked about stones and how we like to throw stones at people, whether they are real, imagined policies. Last night, if you were at the performance at the cafe, we talked about walls, real, imagined policies, things like that. Hey Trey, I'm trying to have a presentation. Can you quiet down, please? Thank you. I'll wait. No, I won't. Can you all still hear me? All right. And the thing we talked about. Thank you, Trang. So the thing that we've been talking extensively about over the past couple days, the thing I keep hearing over and over and over again is the idea of creating a larger, wider table for people. Because I think what's very interesting is we often want to say that there is a line drawn in the sand that either you are for my liberation or you're against me. You are either with me or you're not. And at least when I think about something like my family, for example, who are loving, but not all of them are affirming of my identity as a queer person, it gets really difficult to talk about this with them because, like, I love my family. Even though my uncle is a Baptist pastor and tells me that this is still a phase. Yeah, this is a phase, uncle. Even though my cousins say some really problematic stuff, I still love them. Even some people from my church who are some of the most loving people ever, I quickly become their token gay friend. To say, like, I'm not homophobic, I have a gay friend, it's fine. It's, you know, and if you've ever lived in that world, you know it's a little bit of an issue. Something I picked up on two things really recently from friends of mine. This idea of a commitment to radical difference, which I picked up from Dr. Robin Henderson Espinosa of the Faith Matters Network. And this is this idea that when we say that we are looking to be an inclusive space, when we're saying that we're looking to build a greater community, oftentimes what happens is we say, all right, we're going to be inclusive now, and either you think all of this way and you agree with everything we say, or you're out. And in a way that kind of has institutionalized inclusion. And that's not Jesus. Because oftentimes, like, I know oftentimes all I say is like, well, you know what, Jesus ate with sinners, okay? Jesus, you know, set a table and had sinners with, like, you know, and like, I have to remember that myself. Jesus did eat with everybody. Jesus had dinner with, you know, the leper, the tax collector, the zealot, the government official. Like, Jesus was having dinner with everyone. So if I want to remember, so like, if I'm the zealot in that situation, I have to remember that Jesus is also having dinner with the government official who's trying to take away my rights. Which means that if Jesus does that, I need to be doing that as well. I need to be able to set a table that is wide enough for everyone. So in this presentation, that's kind of like the introduction to all this stuff. In this presentation, I'm going to get this out of my way first because it's bad for the view. So I have some like practical like tips and tricks, not really, but then I also have just some ideas around different biblical things that have helped push me and helped remind me that not only am I beloved, but I also don't need permission to do the thing that I'm here to do. I do not need validation from somebody else to be the person I'm here to be. So let's go ahead and dive in. Think about me. I am super jealous of people. I struggle with envy and jealousy, and that is one of my biggest faults. Why is that under this table? Oh, okay. I struggle with envy and jealousy, and especially because my reaction to people's success, especially people who are in the same lane as me, and by lane I mean other people working in LGBT inclusion work and justice work and intersectional justice work who are on the same age as me, I think, why them and not me? I see someone got a piece posted in Time. Why not me? I see someone got a really good job at a nonprofit. Why not me? I see another cis, straight, white pastor getting a book deal about LGBT inclusion. Why them and not me? And that's no knock to our straight allies out there. Like, I love them, they're necessary, but please pass the mic. And so it's really, really hard. But it's even harder sometimes to see like my queer friends who are succeeding and doing really good work. And that's like, it's kind of like Nadia Bolz-Weber said the other night, I lead by self-incrimination. So I will tell you like what a shit I am all the time. So I'm going to tell you this story now. Story time. Like any good Baptist pastor, I've got some good story illustrations. So I went to college for music education. I went to a small liberal arts university called Christopher Newport. I graduated with a degree in choral music education. Come on, Virginia. Also, that's my middle school teacher, guys. Like, we never knew that we were going to run into each other again. That's crazy. Come on, Jesus. But it's my freshman year of school. I am driving up the road to go see a film with my friend Kat Greenfield. Kat Greenfield is a super duper hippie dippy chick. She's got beautiful blonde hair. She ended up being Ariel on a Disney cruise, just to give you an idea of like, yeah, she is like Ariel personified. Just sweet, lovely, voice of an angel. And it's my freshman year, we're driving together, and I'm complaining about Jake Mills. Jake Mills could sing anything. Jake Mills got all the parts in the opera, he got all the parts in the musical. He was handsome as hell, could date anybody he wanted to, and I'm over here like this like freshman who's still like trying to figure out his like aesthetic, which is now neon trash, which is what I go for. Yeah, and it was I remember saying that, I was like, God, I wish I had his voice, Kat. It's just so amazing. And she looks at me point blank and says, you're never gonna have his voice, ever. So just get over that. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like here I am, like, you know, lamenting that I'm never gonna have somebody's voice and like trying to be vulnerable with you. And you're just gonna say you're never gonna have his voice? And she says, yeah. And he's never gonna have your voice either. Jesus. Like, honest to goodness, that hit me like a pound of bricks. You're never gonna have his voice. And that has stuck with me to this day, thinking, anytime that I feel jealous of somebody else's success, anytime I see somebody on a platform, anytime I see somebody doing good work in the world, I always have to remember, you're never gonna have their voice. And they're not gonna have mine either. Your story is so important. Your story is so individual. Your story is beautifully and details, y'all. Some people say the devil's in the details. I say the liberation of our people is in the details. Can I get a witness? Your story. I want that to stick with you. Because this whole thing is about owning your story. When I came out in September 2015, I kind of, within like queer Christian world, my blog blew up a little bit, as much as you can blow up in queer Christian world, which is like this big. And so I kind of like, you know, led with my anger for a little while. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, so anyone in the world, Enneagram, anyone? Ish. So 8s, we are known for our passion. When we're doing really good, we can channel that into some really good bridge building work and be very compassionate and caring for people. On the other hand, we also want to burn shit to the ground all the time. And we often do. Sometimes by accident, sometimes on purpose. But I wrote a lot of strongly worded blogs. I've made a lot of really strongly worded podcasts. I made a lot of people pissed off, especially my nice, loving, but not affirming congregation, where I said, all I want to do is volunteer. And you can't even let me pass out a bulletin on Sunday? That's bullshit. And for a long time I led with my anger, and like I thought that just like, you know, I have to say the hard thing. I got to speak the truth in love, as they say. And I do. And here's the deal. I don't ever want to tone police myself. And I don't ever want to tone police anybody else's anger or how they present things or how like they process their own emotions. But there is something in me that does feel called to be in a space that is not necessarily 100% progressive, affirming, inclusive, etc. And I think that's because of my 8ness, the way that God has made me. I've got thick skin and an elastic heart, as my Garcia says. And, you know, I can take a lot of heat and I can keep going. And not everybody is built for that. Other people, and I'm okay with that. there is something we say in justice work that it's not our job, especially for marginalized identities, that we always say, like, it's not our job to teach you about why we're angry. You need to get yourself a book. And I agree with that 100%. A marginalized individual, whether it be a person of color, sexual or gender minority, immigrant, etc., they don't need to teach us, the proverbial us, about that stuff. But for those of us who are called to be teachers, for those of us who are called to be bridge builders, for those of us who are trying to make a space like a Wild Goose more intersectional, I feel there is a level of, I don't know, calling is the right word? And I hate using that word calling, it's so loaded sometimes, but just like, that's what I do. And that's why I stay in spaces like these. That's why I stay with spaces at my church, is because I believe that, you know, when I was writing all these angry things, while it's empowering for people to see someone else finally getting angry about what they're angry about, giving language to the things that are like frustrating them, it causes other people to be on the defense. You know, if I go up to my pastor and I say, "You're not being inclusive of me, you're a bigot," you know what he does? He's done, because you automatically challenged his worldview and, you know, his maleness, his whiteness, all these different things. So if you go up to somebody in the majority group and say, "You have white privilege," and they don't have like a construct for white privilege means, they're just like, I did not know, I didn't own slaves, I'm not a horrible person, no. And, you know, like, they get super defensive. And how do you get through that? That puts up more walls. And again, I'm not here to say, like, don't call out things that need to be called out. But if you are someone who is trying to work on those spaces, there are different ways to go about it, and it is frustrating, and it is emotionally taxing, and it is spiritually taxing. And I know firsthand, because I do this every single Sunday when I show up to my church. I put on the full armor of God to walk into the house of God. And I'm just like, okay, what kind of microaggression am I going to get today? I receive all you have for me, Lord. That's what we're going to talk about. So let me give you a little bit of an illustration. There was a man traveling on the road, and he was jumped by 2 robbers and left for dead. Just then, a pastor walks by and says, "Can't touch that. It's dirty. It's gross." But I'm sure someone will be along soon to help him. And then a teacher of the law walks by and says, "Oh, it's gross. I can't touch that. I gotta go." But someone will be along to help him soon, right? And then a Samaritan walks by and sees the man, puts him on his donkey, gets him into an inn, cares for him, nurses him, and really takes care of him. So much so that he told the innkeeper, he's like, "I gotta go, but I'll be back soon, and I'll pay back anything that's on his bill. Like, just tell him not to worry about it. I got him." And I really like that story for a number of reasons. One, because I think that too oftentimes, a group that is in power might see themselves as the Good Samaritan. A group that is in power might see them as the moral right. And like, that story's got a whole lot of nuance that I'm not going to unpack right now. But I want to ask you this: how many times do we see ourselves as the Good Samaritan and not the person injured on the road? And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially for me as someone who like knows that I'm right. I know that I'm right all the time, right? And it is very hard for me to say, okay, what do I have to learn from the person who I think is least likely to teach me something? What am I able to pick up from somebody who even I might fundamentally disagree with? And that sucks, to say that I could learn something from my conservative uncle pastor who doesn't think that my relationship is valid. So these are kind of just some ideas I have about how to have these conversations. Very firstly, when you're having conversations about this kind of stuff, you definitely need to have it in the context of relationships with people. And I'm not saying you have to go up to the picket line at a pride festival with all the people that says homosex is sin. You don't need to do that. Because A, protect yourself, keep good boundaries, but I'm talking about like the moderate in your life. I'm talking about the white moderate in your life who doesn't think that racism is a thing anymore. I'm talking about the white girls at your church who are just like, "Oh my God, I love my gay friends. Have you seen the latest episode of RuPaul? Yeah, it's so great." I'm talking about those people who are just like, they have like, they don't hate gay people or queer people, but they're not exactly affirming either, you know? And that's always like, that's like the most dangerous kind of person, because like they're doing the most in the worst kind of way. And on top of that, these conversations you're having, I always think about my end goal in mind. And this is another one of those hard things that I've had to just swallow and let it be. Conversion is not the objective. I'm not here to convert anybody to my side of the field. I'm not here to tell anybody, you need to bless my marriage or whatever, because otherwise you're a bigot. No. Because again, you do that, you put up walls. Conversion is never the thing. Conversation is. And I think, honestly, the more that we share our heart with people, the more they're apt to show their heart to us. We need to assume, this is point number 2, we need to assume the best about people. Everybody said, what? Ew. I'm going to say something that's going to be a little bit controversial. Conservatives are not terrible people. Oh God, strike me down, please. And yes, that takes so much for me to say. Conservatives are not terrible people, they just have terrible ideas. And granted, terrible ideas can turn into terrible practices, which can turn into impact on people's lives, which is why we need to be having conversations with these people. And by these people, I mean like my family, I mean my church, I mean, you know, that there was a woman who was at the taco stand earlier when she was talking about, she has some ideas about what diversity is, and I'm just like, girl, I need to go. We need to remember that people are in fact human. And on top of that, these are humans that God loves. And when I think about my own, what God has done for me, my own life, my own liberation, my own way of moving through the world and feeling free to be who I am, God wants that for every single person on this planet. God wants that as much for me and for you and for your pastor on Sunday who failed to mention Philando Castile, who failed to mention the shooting at Mother Emanuel, who failed to mention what happened at Pulse. God wants that liberation for them too. And there's just something in me that just is so desperate to see that, and I'm with. And I think if we, so we're talking about assuming the best about people. So another story for me, I went to this thing called Creative Mornings in Atlanta, which is, I thought, ooh, creative, I'm a creative, let me do this. This sounds like so much fun. They had donuts, they had iced coffee, they had like some sort of person who's like a photographer. I'm just like, dope. Free presentation, free networking, I'm about this life. Walk into that space, get my donut, talking to this guy, he's like a graphic designer, his name is Chad or something like that, some white guy name. I'm like, hey Chad, I'm Kevin. It's like, I'm a graphic designer, and I'm like, this is so dope, I'm a LGBTQ advocate. And he's like, what? And I'm like, an LGBTQ advocate? Like I work at intersections of faith and sexuality, and I talk about my story as a gay Christian. He's like, oh, so tell me about your work with the homosexuals. It's very interesting to me. And I'm like, the who? The who? And so like at first I was automatically like, okay, that's the space I'm in. Gotcha. All right. And so I explained, I was like, first of all, we don't like being called homosexuals. It is, in fact, 2016. It was 2016 at the time. But that's the deal. This man had no concept of what it was to interact with a queer person. Yeah. Not even like your most gay white passing person, but like at all. He like, what did you work with the homosexuals? I'm like, are you kidding me? And guess what? They're not kidding you. Notice how I edited myself because I'm a good Christian, so. So like I explained to him this, I talked to him about my work with the LGBT community, I talked to him about my work with like the nonprofits that I work with. And you know what happened? He's like, oh, that's really cool. Because assuming the best about this person allowed me to say like, he's not trying to be an asshole. And you know, many, many times, people are not trying to be assholes. And it takes patience on our parts. It takes us being the bigger person. All of these things that I'm rolling my eyes at because we're always asked to do the work and to be the bigger people. But guess what, folks? That's the work of justice sometimes, and it sucks, and here we are. So, he wasn't being malicious. He was just really freaking ignorant, and that's super annoying. So with those people who are ignorant and not malicious, we need to start asking questions about this stuff. So I think specifically about like my uncle who, God bless my whole family on the white side. They all voted for Trump and were very vocal about it. And when Obama was in office, and I was just like, yay, we have a black president. He's amazing. He's doing so much good work. They're just like, Obama is the worst thing to happen to our country since blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't say anything because I'm going to get shot in this little town. Yeah. Does anyone else have family like that? You're just like, ooh, yes, God. Deliver us, Lord Jesus, in our time. I started asking questions of my uncle specifically, and I also started asking questions of my mom, who isn't a very political person herself. And that is 90% of the time. People don't know why they believe what they do. All of us in this room, more than likely, had gone through a whole mess of trying to figure things out, right? We've had to like deconstruct our faith. We've had to deconstruct what we thought about queer theology. We've had to deconstruct whiteness. We've had to deconstruct all these different things in order to be where we're at today. You know who hasn't done that? My uncle, my mama, the people in your life that you know are the moderates in your life. I often tell people, like, this goes back to I'm not trying to convert people sort of thing. It's like, I don't care what you believe, but I do care why you believe what you do. And if I can take that with me into those spaces and just like ask myself, so why do you think that reforming healthcare again is going to be good? Why do you think it's important that same-sex couples can't get married? Why do you think? Why do you want to destroy the safety net programs for impoverished communities? Why do you think it's going to be a good thing? And what will be the income? Because as soon as you start putting human faces on it, it starts thinking. So that brings me to the next point. We need to, as we're asking questions, they're going to start asking us questions, because that's just kind of how relationships work. Because we usually have this like hunger for story, and we want to know each other and connect with one another. And so sharing our stories of why justice matters to us, why inclusion matters, why Black lives matter, that is going to start changing the minds of people, because as soon as a policy becomes personal, it becomes a point of pride, not only for ourselves, but for the people around us. Come on, alliterations. And honestly, like, we look at what Jesus did. Jesus was walking around telling stories that changed the world. He said the kingdom of God is like, you know? And so like when I tell a story about like how the kingdom is manifesting in my life, through the work of inclusion, through the work of radical racial justice, through the work of fighting for trans lives, that begins to shift the hearts of people, because again, like, all they have is policy, and they don't have any persons attached to that policy. And so that's always something I challenge. I always say, it's like, what's your policy on that? Don't have a policy unless it's personal, meaning you know somebody attached to it. Ooh, it's sweaty. I say this on my podcast, A Tiny Revolution. You can look it up on iTunes. That all revolutions begin as good conversations between people. And that is something I firmly believe. It starts on one-on-one conversations. And in all of this, remaining calm is a big part of it. Now again, I'll keep reiterating this, is like, I'm not here to tone police. I'm not here to say that you shouldn't be angry about something. Yes, you should be angry about a lot of stuff. Jesus got angry about stuff too. So if he can flip tables if Jesus can flip tables in the temple, I can go on a little bit of a Twitter rant every now and again, okay? But I also have to, again, as someone who does feel called to be in less intersectional spaces to help bring a new perspective to them, I have to remember, like, is my anger right now going to be something that is going to move this conversation forward, or is this going to be something that's going to be a detriment to my progress with this group of people? I know that I have personally fulfilled a whole lot of stereotypes about the crazy, gay, liberal agenda trying to take away our rights in this country. Plenty of time, and God bless it. But I'm sure you've all been in that space too. Specifically, another story time for me. I had just come from therapy one afternoon because, you know, therapy is great, hashtag self-care. And my friend was about getting ready to move to California, and so he said, I'm getting together at a brewery with everybody, so come on down. And Lord knows I love a good beer. Thank God for the beer tent here. Yes, come on. I don't know who you are, but let's get one later. Yes, sir. But I went to this thing, and I'm feeling a little bit raw, but I'm just like, you know what? It's just beer. What kind of deep conversation could happen at a brewery on a Tuesday night? You know, God will surprise you, right? And I show up, and there is this man there who I met at a wedding like this the weekend before, and I could already tell that I didn't like him. But you know, I'm trying to be a polite individual, and he's it's like talking to me. I did this thing called the World Race. It's an 11-month, 11-country mission trip, and it's got problems out the wazoo that I did. Hindsight is 2015, y'all. But I go there, and he's like, so did you like the World Race? And I was like, actually, it plunged me into a deep depression where I nearly killed myself. So no, I didn't really like it. And he's like, oh, well, what about it? And so I'm trying to explain to him a little bit about my story, but also, mind you, I just came from therapy, and I don't want to talk to people. And I told him, I said, hey, just so you know, I came from therapy, so if I'm a little sensitive right now and don't want to talk, like, if I walk away, it's not because I hate you, it's because I literally am just trying to, like, maintain being in public. And, you know, so full disclosure, and he, again, this is one of those things where I think he was being ignorant and not malicious, but he said, first of all, he started off with this, like, I don't mean to be possibly offensive, but rule, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but you can take this as a soundbite with you. If you think that you are going to say something offensive, don't say it. It is that simple. Jesus wept. And this man looks at me and he says, I just want to let you know that, like, I don't want to see you as gay because, you know, seeing you as gay is just so limiting, like seeing you by your sexual orientation. I just want to see you as a child of God because your worth is so much more infinitely valuable through that lens. And I'm just like, I'm a teacher. I need to build a bridge here. I need to build a bridge here. I'm a teacher. I'm okay. We're okay. We just went to therapy. Namaste. And so I went to, namaste over there, girl. I don't know who said that, but you're funny. But he said to me, I said to him, like, well, I understand. That's a very kind way of looking at that. And so I tried to explain that, wow, that's erasing my story and my struggle and erasing what God has done in me. Erasing the story that God is telling. Like, I don't want you to not see me as gay. Like, I paint my nails for God's sakes. Like, I color my hair because I want to look as obviously queer as possible because this right here matches what's on the inside. This matches who God created me to be. And it's like, I need you to see me that. And like, plus, if you are wanting to be somebody who like wants to love me means to stand with me, and to stand with me means to see me. And if you're gonna see me and address the problems I have as a queer person in this world, you need to see all of this. To which he said, well, like, I get it, but... And he just recited the same things, and I was double fisting 2 IPAs at the time, and I said, you are not hearing me! And now, mind you, I'm in public, and I'm double fisting 2 beers, and I'm yelling at this guy, who turns out, by the way, was a pastor, who got his degree from Hillsong United College. No shade, but a little bit of shade. Oh my gosh, but that is an example of not staying calm. Again, I lead by self-incrimination. And that happens a lot to us, right? And again, I'm not mad at myself for being pissed off at him and yelling at him. He kind of deserved it. And again, it's also not my job to educate him on that. I shouldn't have to like be accosted in a brewery on a Tuesday. None of us should have to do that work. But again, as someone who I personally feel called to be that guy, to tell them what's what, I walked away with that experience with a lot of shame because I'm just like, I didn't do right. And that's a personal thing. I'm not saying that you have to react this way, but like for me, I walked away thinking like, that guy can't hear me now. Granted, like I was hurting and I was having a painful moment and I was processing what happened in therapy that day, which was really fucking hard. now that guy is never going to feel the liberation I feel. That guy is never going to, might not ever taste it. It might come from somebody else, and I pray that it does. But if I want to be the person to build a bridge, and I profess that I do, and I profess that Jesus loves that person, I got to act like I love him. Not even act, I have to love them. And it is so hard to love thy enemies. It is so hard to pray for those who hurt you. It's so hard to love the people who hate you the most. But that's kind of the deal. I think about and it costs a lot, you know? It costs so much, and like many of us I know in this room, we have lost everything. When I came out, I was actually a part of a ministry with Adventures in Missions, which is the same organization that facilitates the World Race. I was on track to be a worship leader. I was on track to really be a part of this really great organization. And I saw my life there, but then when I finally was honest with myself and honest with God, I lost everything. Couldn't even lead short-term mission trips domestically. And I had everything taken from me. So I moved to Atlanta with no job, no money, $2,000 more in debt than I was when I came in. And I've never regretted it. And I look at certain people who have stood up for rights of other people, said the radical thing. Pastors who have stood up for Black lives, pastors who have stood up for queer inclusion. And then also pastors who stand up for queer inclusion and say JK at Eugene Peterson. If any of y'all saw that, he wrote an article had an interview one day that said, yeah, I'm all for LGBT inclusion and same-sex relationships and marriage. And then the next day in Christianity Today, he said, just kidding. Oh yeah, if you missed that, Eugene Peterson retracted everything he said in a Christianity Today article and basically twisted the whole article and said, well, they said if, and I don't deal in hyperboles. It's a lot of bullshit. So I'm sorry if I squashed your morning. But that's such an example. I'm just because Eugene Peterson, he was about to lose everything because Lifeway said, we're not going to sell your books unless you say JK. And then he said that, and now everything's fine and happy, white Christian world. But how embarrassing to be the person who stood up for what was right and then deny everything you actually believe. May God have mercy. Sorry, that was a little tangent right there. 1040, thank you. As you're having conversation with people, you need to be sure to make your ask. Because a lot of times, we'll have all these conversations and we'll share our stories. And the thing that happens a lot of times is people love, it's a term I picked up from trans comedian Patty Harrison, is people love to listen to tragic stories and emotionally masturbate to them. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's oh my gosh, I listened to my queer friend, I listened to my Black friend, I listened to my immigrant friend, I listened to my woman friend, I listened to my trans friend, and oh my gosh, they're my friend, I'm not problematic at all. When you're in these spaces, when you're having conversations with people, you have to have an ask. So right now, my ask to my leadership in my church is every single time I have a meeting with them, it's hey, if I sent you an article, would you read it? If I sent you a book suggestion, would you read it? If we hosted a brunch for all the queer Christians at our church, would you come to it and hear our stories? Really, really intentional asks, because a lot of times people will hear that and they're not changed at all. People will hear our stories, it sits in them, but they don't have to do anything with them because people at positions of privilege don't have to do the work. And especially if, no offense to white, straight, cis people in the room, positions of privilege isolate you from actually doing any work sometimes, and it is really, really important to not pull a Eugene Peterson, but to, when the pedal hits the metal, when you are on the brink of losing everything, you either say, do I want to follow Jesus or not? Or do I want to have a JK moment? That's the alternate title of this thing. But make sure you're making your ask. Don't allow people to consume your stories and emotionally masturbate with them. It is the most annoying thing in the world, and it's emotionally draining for you. For so long, I was having these one-on-one conversations with people, and nothing was shifting until I started I need to make an ask of this person. Kind of as I've been sharing about this whole thing, owning your story and having conversations about it. This is where it gets to this part about actually owning your story. is that this is not a zero-sum game. This is not about conversion. This is not about us winning and them losing and the conservatives just like going away and like, you know, disappearing into the darkness abyss of wherever. This is about collective liberation. And until I am as committed to my own liberation as I am committed to my white, moderate pastor's liberation, I'm not going to actually accomplish anything. There's the line in Psalm 23, he sets a table for me in the presence of mine enemies. I love that line for a couple of reasons. One, first, I feel like God wants to show that in the midst of strife that we're provided for. Emotionally, spiritually. Ever since losing everything, even when I lost everything, I still had enough. Still have enough. I live month to month. Some days I don't know where the money's going to come from, but somehow a gig comes through, another thing, and I give thanks to God for that. I'm one of those, I see God in all the things. Two, I think it is to confound people who look at us and say, like, how are they living so joyfully? How are they living with such peace in their life? How are they actually succeeding if they're on the wrong side of history? And that's because God's with us. Duh. And it honestly, like, it shows that God is showing up for the least of these, the people with the boot of oppression on their neck. And third, God sets a table for us in the presence of our enemies to invite our enemies to the table with us. Oof. Gross, right? Because Lord knows I don't want to have dinner with all these people. I don't want to have dinner with the person in the picket line who's, how would it says, is homosexist sin. I don't want to have dinner with my pastor half the time, if I'm being honest. Should we have healthy boundaries? Absolutely. Do we need to make sure we're practicing self-care? Yes. But again, if you are someone who is called to do this work, to have these conversations, when we set the table, we set it for everybody. For you, for me, for the white moderates in your life, for your conservative uncle, and for your mom who just doesn't get you. So a little bit of a story time, and tell me when it's 45, if you wouldn't mind. It's probably already there. When I first started at my church, I told my pastor that I was gay, and I said, am I ever gonna hit a glass ceiling here? And he said, no, we're so excited that you're here. We want you to be here. And well-meaning pastors often lie accidentally. And he told me a couple weeks later, we can't allow you to lead because that would be the church making a statement that we're not prepared to make yet. And I was devastated. And I cried, and I wrote a lot of angry blogs, and I tried to get meetings and tried to make them listen to me, and I tried to get them to see, like, what you're doing is violence. What you're doing is, you know, doing the baby social justice advocate thing by leading with my anger. And again, nothing wrong with anger. And then I got to this point, I was just like, I don't need your permission, do I? If I profess to be like, you know, I'm a non-denom person, evangelical, Pentecostal leaning weirdo, and mystic. And I think about that line is just like, we are a priesthood of all believers. And so if I'm here to do the thing, I'm just gonna do the fucking thing, okay? Like, I don't need my pastor to say, Kevin, go lead this Bible study. Kevin, write new worship music. Kevin, go be a representative of our church at a different conference and like lead a workshop on something. I do not need permission from any man, woman, or person on this earth to do the thing that I'm here to do. And neither do you. I think about Jesus a lot, obviously. I love Jesus. But here's another thing. I am unapologetically Christian. Like, I know so many times, like, people will, like, want to shy away from saying that they're a Christian because it's embarrassing sometimes. You see people acting like the antithesis of what Christ represented on the earth. And it's just like, I don't want to be a Christian today because these people are assholes. And I am unapologetically Christian. I will wave that banner all day long. And I think about Jesus because, like, Jesus had no technical authority. Jesus didn't have some rabbi that he followed. He followed God because Jesus was so in tune with who he was created to be. And that is what made him so dangerous. That's why he walked up in the place and said, you have heard it said, but I tell you. Yes. That's why I said, like, you know what? I have been anointed to, like, proclaim good news to the poor and set the captives free. That is what I'm here to do. And if we are supposed to be in the same line as Jesus, in the same tradition, the same thing is true for you. You are anointed to set the captives free. You have good news for the poor, and there is a gospel of every single one of you being written with your lives every single day. You do not need permission to tell that gospel story. And there is someone in this world that is only can hear a gospel from you. From you, from you. There's a gospel out there that some people only can hear from your lips, with your story, with your life. And if you think that you don't have much of a story, you obviously haven't been paying attention to yourself enough, and you need to love yourself a little bit more. And I'm dead serious about that. If you think that you don't have a story, you are undermining the beautiful creation that God has created you to be. Can I get a witness? You are not responsible for other people's reaction to your truth. You're only responsible to tell the truth. And I'll say that again. You're not responsible for somebody else's reaction to your truth and to your story and to what you're here to do. You're only responsible to tell the truth, tell your story, and to get it done, to do the thing. And in all this, I think it is really important, like self-care tips, because I'm always #self-care. You need to remember your boundaries. Because I know for myself, like burnout, especially among social justice advocates, is high. We go. We Mickey Scape Jones with, again, Faith Matters Network, excuse me, talks about, she said this yesterday, she's like, I don't think that we all need to like kill ourselves at the altar of justice just so that we can get a little bit of head. And we don't. Like, I am not like, listen, I love my church, but I've set a boundary. 3 years, if it's not moving forward, I'm out. Like that's my boundary. If things are not starting to progress, like I'm out. And the same thing for you. If you are like working with someone, talking with somebody, know when it's time to build that bridge and know when it's time to burn it. Because sometimes just like, you know, like me persistently being in your life, sharing my life with you, giving my time, energy, story, if they're not here to receive it, you know what Jesus says? If a town will not receive you, shake the dust from your sandals and get out of there. And sometimes that's the place. If someone is not able to receive you, shake the dust from your sandals and get the hell out of there. Stop wasting your time. Your lemon. What's the other thing? Burns resin. Yeah. Just checking if I got all my notes. I also want to point out one other thing. Sometimes you have conversations with individual peoples, and that's really, really good. But sometimes it's not always the most effective way, and I actually thought about this like on the way up here. Jesus had meals with people, right? Because Jesus knew the way that to someone's heart was through their stomach. Can I get a witness? Amen. Because sometimes, like, so what we do at my church, and this is just an example, like we actually gather once a month and have brunch as a community of queer Christians and allies, and we invite other people to come in. And then at the end of it, we just share who we are, why we're there, what we want out of this group, and what we need in the moment. And I'll tell you what, people getting shots like, I had no idea there were so amazing people here. Get away from me. I rebuke you, little bee. I got stung by the bee the other day, so I'm a little bitter. I need to start wrapping this up so you guys can get on to the next thing. But here's the deal, is that maybe we should just do away with conversations. Maybe we should start inviting people into our communities, into our lives, and again, that is creating a brave space and making room for them to really screw it up. And us having grace for them to say, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, you did, you fucked it up. You said the wrong thing. And you know what? It's okay, because I love you. And that's what this is about. This is about love. And if we are leading with our love, that is an inexhaustible resource. Anger is a really good Kickstarter to something, and often that's where gets people to where they need to be, but it's not where people can stay, because anger is jet fuel and it will burn bright and hot and burn out really fast when it's over. But love for myself, love for God, love for people, that's the Holy Trinity right there. And so if I can work on that mutual self-giving in all directions of love to myself, to God, to the other person, coming back to me over and over and over again. That's an inexhaustible resource, people. That's what's owning my story. So I want you to remember 3 things. 1, no one's ever going to have your voice. 2, ask questions, stay patient. And 3, know that you don't need permission from antibody. Okay? Yeah, so I'm going to close this out in prayer real quick, and if you want to be Pentecostal with me, you can open up your hands and receive this blessing. If not, that's cool too. God, I thank you for every single person in this place, every single revolutionary life that is being shaped, formed, manifested in this place. God, I thank you for the queer people, and I thank you for the people of color, and I thank you for my immigrant friends, and I thank you for the women, and I thank you for the men, and I thank you for the straight people, and I thank you for the trans people. I thank you for every single identity represented in this place, because it all belongs. Everything belongs in you, God. There is nothing that you cannot do. So in our time, God, we would ask that we would see a grand liberation, that people would start waking up to the truth of who you are, what you're doing in this world, and we would not ever have to be afraid to be who we are in any space. So God, we receive your presence. We receive the affirmation of your story. So friends, family, brothers, sisters, and siblings, go out into this world knowing that you are a gospel message that someone needs to hear. Go into this space knowing that you are anointed to preach the good news, to set the captives free, to do the damn thing. Lord, have mercy on this world, for we need it every single day. And Lord, have mercy on us for the moments we think that we have it all together. May we be humble as we walk humbly, love mercy, and do justice. In the name of the Holy Parent, Holy Child, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace, everyone. Thank you so much. Also, if you want to connect with me, I have my business cards up here. I'd love for you to grab one. I also, for those who don't know, I have a blog. It's at theKevinGarcia.com, and you can actually just Google Kevin Garcia and be connected with that. I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about intersections of faith and sexuality. And if you think work like this is important through podcast, blogs, and YouTube stuff, I would love for you to support me on Patreon. And again, all this stuff is at theKevinGarcia.com. And thank you so much, and I'm really, really happy you came today. Have a good one.